But thank you for taking, time out. I'm guessing, the week before the festival and you flying, it's got to be a very hectic time. So I really appreciate you agreeing to have a little chat. We're obviously here to talk about Hauntology, which has been selected for Fright Fest, the 25th anniversary of Fright Fest, no less. How are you feeling about the screening?
I have wanted to go to Fright Fest for years because there's a podcast I love called The Evolution of Horror, and they talk about Fright Fest all the time. So I've been hyped up to go.
And how did the sort of the submission and selection process, how long have you been sitting on this secret?
I think we found out in March or April. So it has
Wow,
been quite a while now because here we are, it's August 13th.
that is, I mean, hats off. I would not be able to keep quiet about anything like that for anywhere near that length of time. So, congrats on that.
Thank you. When I found out, I was literally jumping up and down. Like, this is the festival I've been most excited to be a part of.
Nice. And for people that haven't sort of read up on hauntology, how have you been describing it to people?
I tell them that it is about two siblings who go on a road trip, and each place they visit has a different ghost story. But by the end, all of the ghost stories are connected. So that's kind of the big surprise and payoff of the film. And I also describe it as a queer horror movie. And one of my favorite things about it is there's four vignettes, and each one has a different season. We have fall, summer, winter, and then spring. So it's out of the normal order, but nevertheless, we get like a whole seasonal year in hauntology.
And I think it's told in, like you say, a very sort of an anthology, portmanteau style. Typically films that sort of fit within this sort of subgenre have multiple directors and voices behind it.
hmm
How do you think that having just your singular voice helps the piece?
Well, I love that you brought that up because the movie that really inspired me to do it this way is Trick or Treat, which I'm sure you've seen. I thought that film just did a beautiful job of connecting all the segments and it all feels so cohesive. And I guess that's what I was hoping to do. Each segment has, sort of my style. I think they're all very colorful. All the characters are queer, and that all comes from me. I think it makes the viewing and the story is kind of complicated. So it helped that I directed each one of them because I think if I had assigned it to different directors, there would have needed to be a lot of communication to make sure all the little Easter eggs and all the connective tissue is cohesive.
Yeah. And with it sort of primarily being your voice, how did you go about ensuring that each story was varied enough from the others in the lineup? Because, like you say, it is very much your distinctive voice, your
Mm.
distinctive style, but each story has sort of a different slant to it.
Yeah, I think I did sort of pick a theme for each story. So we have an art gallery segment that borrows elements from Giallo. We have the Victorian Gothic segment with the candelabra and sort of those old school Gothic elements. And then we have a segment that's mostly inspired by Let's Scare Jessica to Death, where there's an emphasis on sound and little dialogue. And we're out in this rural lake house, and then the very first segment in the movie is a story about witchcraft. So I think I just focused on what do I love about each of these sort of subgenres of horror and put my little queer spin on it.
And you've mentioned sort of Easter eggs. That's one of the things that I really enjoyed is how interconnected these stories and this world
Mm.
is. And like, sort of as you're viewing it, you slowly pick up, there's a news story on a radio station that a character's listening to as they're driving, which,
hmm
later comes into play. Like, oh, that links into that. And I'm guessing that there's maybe even more buried that encourages a round two or third viewing of this.
Yes, I think there's a lot. And another goal of mine was just what if I made a movie that you could watch it each year, maybe in October, and always get a little something new. I think that's one of the fun things about watching movies for me. Uh, I think should I point out one of the Easter eggs?
I mean, it's up to you. It's your film.
Because yeah, I'm like, how much do I want to give away? The thing that maybe I'll just hint at it. We have Nancy Loomis's character has this brooch that's a letter C, and Zoe Luna's character has a necklace that's a letter C. So maybe keep an eye out. Maybe if anyone enjoys this movie, they can speculate about how those characters might be connected.
And Hauntology, to me, it had that kind of almost eerie Indiana, Are You Afraid of the Dark, ghost stories around the campfire vibe to it. These shows were, for a lot of people, their paths into horror cinema. Are you hoping that maybe Hauntology might do a similar thing for a future generation?
Yeah, it is. I've been describing it as like a gateway horror movie. I think my composer and I lovingly referred to it as cozy horror because it's not, it's not Saw, it's not sinister. There is something kind of sweet about hauntology, but then you get the horror elements as well. We have like a brutal throat slashing moment, and a few scares that I've heard people think are effective. I almost forget that the movie's scary because I love horror so much that when I just watch horror as comfort movies. And so when I watch hauntology, I obviously not scared at all. I'm just here to see the sweet relationship between the characters like Jasmine and Venus.
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's a great film, and I think so you've mentioned that there's a lot of queer characters in this. I mean, horror has always been queer. I think a lot of people
Hmm.
look the other way to that, but it's undeniable. Horror has very much always been for, those outside of society, and queer people have, for so long fallen into that bracket, unfortunately. But there seems to be a shift at the moment. You look at some of the most successful films that have, garnered the most buzz this year, and you've got The People's Joker, you've got I Saw the TV Glow. Do you think that, that now is, a proper time for queer creators to finally get their voice heard within the realm of horror?
It's a strange time because there is more queer horror than ever, but even me just making this very indie movie, I'm feeling a little bit of the backlash. Like people have been posting on our socials sometimes like, oh, this is LGBT plus propaganda, and like, why, oh, is this just like a kill white people movie? And and this is all just based off of like a teaser trailer. I know people haven't even seen the movie yet, and when they do watch it maybe they'll feel the same way, but I don't know. It's like me, just as the writer director, I'm thinking like, oh, this is the perfect time to make a queer movie, but it's still a little tense. Not everyone wants to see characters they don't relate to, I guess.
But then there are going to be some people that have been dying to see,
Yeah,
these people represented, and I think that's the audience that we need to focus on, because for so long
right.
there hasn't been that representation. So I just want to thank you for helping get that out there, because I think it is important that everybody gets to see themselves represented, and you go through these stories and there is so much representation and inclusivity, so that's a real testament to what you've done.
Thank you so much for saying that because that was my goal was, I grew up watching movies where it's just like maybe there's a gay best friend character, but usually there's no queer characters at all. And it was like, what would it look like if I made a movie where every character is queer or somewhere on the spectrum of queerness? So I'm glad that you're championing that as well.
And finally, Fright Festers, are going to be sort of like working out what they're going to be watching when. Why do you hope that they take a chance with Hauntology?
Why do I hope they take a chance?
Yeah. What do you hope that they get from watching this film?
I think, well, Fright Fest is where all the horror fans are coming together. Our last festival wasn't a horror focused festival. So I think what I'm just kind of looking for, I want people to see it because there's um a lot of new stuff, like all the queer spins I put on everything, but familiar horror stories as well. The gothic, the giallo, the witchcraft. So I think if you're a horror fan, there's something in Hauntology for you. That's my hope. So we'll see what the audience thinks.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they're gonna love it. And thank you so much for your time and best of luck with the screening.
Thank you. This was lovely.
Yeah, it's a great film. I think it's gonna play, so well, especially sort of like in that sort of late night spot when everybody's like more together. I think it's great. And
11
as a
p.m.
and as a fan of, as a fan of the craft, the first story just sort of spoke to me with, the witchy elements and stuff. And then you've got somebody from the craft legacy in it was just, links it even further. So,
Oh, I
you know,
know. And she's fabulous. I hope everyone loves Zoe.
yes. Well, I say I'm going to thank you for your time and let you go off and talk to some more people. And I will see you at Fright Fest. I'll be lurking around for the weekend, primarily on the media wall. So I'm sure our paths will cross at some point and we can say hello in person.
I can't wait. I'll see you there.